The Silicon Shield. Why Taiwan's geography protects it better than weapons. On the morning of January 14th, 2025, American officials woke up to news that should have terrified them. China had just announced military exercises circling Taiwan. Again, fighter jets crossed the median line, warships positioned themselves around the island, and for the 100th time, analysts asked, will this be the day? But here is what nobody is talking about. Taiwan does not need fighter jets to protect itself. It does not need aircraft carriers or missile defense systems. Because Taiwan's real defense is not made of steel, it is made of silicon. These tiny semiconductors, no bigger than your fingernail, are the reason the world cannot afford to let Taiwan fall, and understanding why might be the most important geopolitical lesson of the 21st century. Let me show you how an island of 36,000 square kilometers became more strategically valuable than oil fields, nuclear weapons, and military alliances combined. Taiwan makes 60% of the world's semiconductors. Read that again, 60%. And when it comes to the most advanced chips, the ones that power your iPhone, your car's computer, ChatGPT, and literally every piece of modern technology, Taiwan makes 90% of them. One company drives this dominance. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. In 2024, TSMC alone captured 64% of the global contract chip-making market. Their revenue hit $165 billion, up 22% from the year before. They are the 9th most valuable company on Earth. But TSMC is not just big. They are irreplaceable. They produce the only chips capable of running cutting-edge artificial intelligence. They make the processors for every major smartphone manufacturer except Samsung. They fabricate the components that go into fighter jets, satellites, and missile systems. Without TSMC, the global economy does not slow down, it stops. Now here is where geography becomes destiny. The company TSMC has its most advanced factories. The ones making 3nm and 5nm chips, all on Taiwan's western coast, right across the strait from mainland China, less than 200 kilometers away. Taiwan has a policy called the broken nest. If China invades, Taiwan will destroy these factories, not disable them. Destroy them completely. Think about what that means. A Chinese invasion does not give Beijing control of the world's chip supply. It eliminates that supply. The factories would be rubble. The equipment would be demolished. The expertise would scatter. China knows this. The United States knows this. The entire world knows this. That is exactly why Taiwan remains independent. This is what defense analysts call the Silicon Shield. But it is not really a shield. It is a hostage situation where Taiwan holds the gun. Let's talk numbers. In 2023, the global economy ran on about 1.15 trillion semiconductors. That is trillion, with a capital T. Those chips went into $574 billion worth of devices and equipment. Remove Taiwan from that equation, and you are looking at immediate global economic collapse. Cars stop being manufactured because modern vehicles need hundreds of chips. Data centers go dark because AI processors disappear. Smartphones become impossible to produce. Military systems lose their computational backbone. The US analyzed this scenario. Their conclusion? A full-scale conflict over Taiwan would cost the global economy $10 trillion. Even a blockade just cutting off Taiwan without invading would cost $2.7 trillion in the first year alone. For context, the entire war in Ukraine has cost less than $250 billion globally. Taiwan would be 40 times worse. But China doesn't just want Taiwan for emotional or historical reasons. They need those chips. In 2023, China bought 53.8% of Taiwan's semiconductor exports, more than half. Chinese technology companies, Chinese manufacturers, Chinese military systems are all running on Taiwanese chips. Beijing has tried to fix this. Their Made in China 2025's strategy aimed to produce 40% of their semiconductors domestically by 2020 and 70% by 2025. They hit the first target in 2022, 2 years late. The second target looks impossible. Why? Because making advanced chips is not just hard, it is almost magical. TSMC's 3-nanometer process took decades of research, billions in investment, and expertise that cannot be copied. China managed to produce a 7-nanometer chip in 2023, which was impressive. But TSMC is already working on 2-nanometer technology. The gap is not closing, it is widening. Now here is where it gets interesting. The United States is just as dependent on Taiwan as China is. Maybe more. American weapons systems, intelligence infrastructure, and commercial technology, all of it runs on chips that Taiwan makes. This terrifies Washington. In 2022, the United States passed the CHIPS Act, committing $450 billion to domestic semiconductor production. They are building fabrication plants in Arizona, New York, and Texas. Europe committed $103 billion to similar projects. South Korea is spending $470 billion through 2047. Japan is rebuilding its entire chip industry. Everyone wants to reduce dependence on Taiwan. But here is the problem. They are all at least 5 years behind, probably more. The newest United States fabrication plants will produce older generation chips. The cutting-edge stuff remains in Taiwan. And that's intentional. TSMC is opening factories in Arizona, Japan, and Germany. But they are keeping their most advanced production, the 2-nanometer and 3-nanometer processes, exclusively in Taiwan. Why? Because the moment that technology leaves the island, Taiwan's leverage disappears. Former TSMC executive Yang Quanglei said it bluntly. The company does not want to be a shield. Why would we want to stand on the front line and be used as a shield? It sees itself as a business, not a geopolitical tool, but geography and technology have made it both. Let's game this out. Scenario 1. China invades Taiwan. What happens? The fabs owned by TSMC get destroyed, possibly by Taiwan itself if necessary. China captures smoking ruins and equipment that took decades to build. Global chip production drops by more than half overnight. Every advanced economy enters immediate recession. China's economy, which depends on those same chips, shrinks by an estimated 7%. Taiwan's economy collapses by 40%. That 7% is not just a number. It means mass unemployment, political instability, and the end of China's economic rise. Beijing knows this. That makes an invasion unlikely as long as those factories exist and the world depends on them. Scenario 2. China implements a blockade of Taiwan instead of invading. It cuts off shipping, strangles the island economically, and forces surrender without firing a shot. The global economy loses $2.7 trillion in year 1. China's economy still shrinks because it cannot get the chips either. If the blockade lasts long enough that Taiwan's chip production stops, the outcome collapses into scenario 1. There is no winning move here, only degrees of disaster. But the silicon shield is eroding. Not because Taiwan is losing its technological edge. Taiwan is not. The rest of the world is deliberately creating alternatives. US fab capacity is projected to increase by 203% by 2032. That does not match Taiwan's capability, but it creates redundancy. Europe's fabs will not make the most advanced chips, but they will make enough to keep critical industries running. Japan and South Korea are rebuilding their semiconductor ecosystems to reduce dependence on Taiwan. From America's perspective, this is risk management. Washington does not view semiconductors as a magical deterrent that prevents war. Washington treats them as a strategic vulnerability that must be fixed. The goal is not to protect Taiwan because of chips. The goal is to ensure access to chips regardless of what happens to Taiwan. That is a fundamentally different calculation. Taiwan understands this. A Taiwanese defense analyst said, "The silicon shield was always a Taiwanese idea, not an American one." So what is Taiwan's real defense? The Porcupine strategy. Make invasion so costly that China will not attempt it, even without the silicon shield. Taiwan is investing over 3% of gross domestic product in defense now. But Taiwan is not buying aircraft carriers or expensive fighter jets it cannot afford. Taiwan is buying missile systems, naval mines, coastal defenses, and submarines, weapons designed for asymmetric warfare. The idea is simple: make China bleed. A 2023 war game by the Center for Strategic and International Studies concluded that China would likely lose an invasion of Taiwan, but the cost to all sides would be catastrophic. Taiwan only has to hold on long enough for help to arrive, or make the invasion so expensive that Beijing decides it is not worth trying. This is deterrence through protraction. The silicon shield buys time by making invasion economically suicidal. The Porcupine strategy buys time by making invasion militarily suicidal. Together, they create a defense that does not rely on any single factor. But there is a deeper problem no one wants to talk about. Taiwan's silicon shield only works if the world believes losing Taiwan would be catastrophic. The more the world diversifies away from Taiwan by building fabs in America, Europe, and Japan, the less catastrophic Taiwan's loss becomes. Taiwan is caught in an impossible position. It needs global dependence on its chips to maintain relevance. But that same dependence makes Taiwan a flashpoint for global conflict. As the world reduces dependence to protect itself, Taiwan's strategic importance slowly fades. Yang Quanglei, the former TSMC executive, put it harshly. TSMC faces only two real risks: the US government and war, not Samsung, not Intel. He is right. TSMC does not have industrial competitors anymore. It is so far ahead that market competition barely matters. The only threats are political American policy that forces production overseas, or Chinese military action that destroys it entirely. This is what happens when a company becomes systemically important. When you are the 9th most valuable company on Earth, and you control 90% of the world's most advanced chip production, you stop being a business and start being critical infrastructure. Governments do not let you fail, and they also do not let you operate independently. Here is the final twist. China's aggression toward Taiwan might actually be counterproductive. Every time Beijing flies jets across the median line or conducts military exercises, it reminds the world why depending on Taiwan is dangerous, and it accelerates exactly what China does not want: the world building alternatives. If China left Taiwan alone, the rest of the world might slow down semiconductor diversification. After all, why spend hundreds of billions of dollars building less efficient fabs when Taiwan is working fine? But Chinese pressure makes that diversification a national security priority. In other words, China's threats are eroding the very thing that keeps Taiwan valuable. So what does this mean for the future? Taiwan is not going anywhere. The island's semiconductor dominance will continue for at least the next decade. TSMC will remain the most advanced chipmaker in the world. The silicon shield will continue protecting Taiwan, but it will grow thinner every year as alternatives emerge. China will keep pressuring Taiwan, but invasion remains unlikely as long as the economic cost is catastrophic. The US will keep building domestic fabs, not to replace Taiwan, but to create backup capacity. And Taiwan will keep investing in technology and defense, trying to maintain relevance in a world that is slowly diversifying away from them. The silicon shield isn't disappearing. It is evolving. This shift moves from a single point of leverage into a distributed network where Taiwan remains important, but no longer irreplaceable. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Geography used to be about mountains, rivers, and natural barriers. Now it is about supply chains, technological expertise, and economic interdependence. Taiwan's geography is not its coastline or its mountains. It is the fabrication plants of TSMC sitting on the western shore, producing chips the world cannot live without, until the day it can.